Hey there, I'm Tim. I do marketing here at realdrseattle. In this video, I want to go over everyone's favorite topic, money. Now, it's not going to be my money, but more of my clients' money. Now, every month, I oversee a healthy 6-digit spend between Facebook and Google for all of my clients. And if I'm not careful, it can be real easy to view it just as numbers on a spreadsheet and not realize what that money really represents. I mean, I see on the spreadsheet, what's the difference between spending, say, $1,000 versus $1,200 this month on Botox? $200. But behind that $200 is real human effort that I always keep in mind for my clients. So this came very obvious to me early on in my career. One of my first clients was a bakery. They were a small mom and pop bakery. They had a retail presence, though they sold a good amount to stores and businesses. And they told me for every dollar worth of product that they sold, after cost of goods sold, they made about 20 cents. Now, from that 20 cents, they had to pay for insurance, lease, wages, utilities. And after all that, they may have a couple of $100 for me to spend on their behalf. And so when they gave me that $100 that they entrusted me with, I was actually touched by it because I saw for them what it meant. For them, it meant working 12 hours a day, every day. It meant working all day behind a hot stove where it's sweaty, and it meant a lot of physically demanding work. And for them, that $300 to $400 that they gave to me, I knew what it stood for in terms of their effort, and so I was really touched by it. Now, and I see that with my current clients. So, for instance, with plastic surgeons, I know that they can spend 12 hours in a very exhaustive and intensive surgery, standing on their feet all day. For my med spa clients, it can mean that they have evening appointments to do Botox applications when they'd rather be home spending time with their families. So I make sure never to become glib with their money, and I understand what it means. And here are the ways that I try to best honor their money. Number one, of course, first, I always look for coupons. Now, a lot of my customers, they're dealing with the Facebook and Google duopoly. And for some of my clients, I'll talk them into Bing. Now, some of my plastic surgery clients, they, for instance, do stem cell therapies. And Google, they've really kind of equivocated on this topic. Sometimes they consider it appropriate, other times they consider it an unproven treatment therapy. And not only will they take down the entire campaign, they'll take down the entire account if you have stem cell therapy on your website. And even if you take it off, it may not change Google's stance. So I like to have Bing already on the deck, warmed up in case this happens, in case of an emergency. And the way I talk my clients into this is say, look, if you spend $500, I can get you a $500 coupon for $500 worth of free advertising. So spend $1,000, you don't have to pay $500. And when they hear that, they love that deal and they always go for it. I had another one of my clients, and she does a weight loss product, and she wanted to do a Facebook campaign for $500 for the month of December for people who were working on their New Year's resolutions. And I was able to find her a $100 off coupon if she tried the new ad format. And of course, she just loved that. So I had her only spend $400, and she thought that was the best thing ever. So for most of my clients, when I can apply a coupon, they always appreciate that. Next is I always take a look at my cost per clicks. For some of my campaigns, I think the most expensive clicks I'm paying for is $40, which is really nothing. If you ever work with lawyers, those guys can be spending up to $100 a click. But in my campaigns, I typically have 3 zones. So my green zone is between $0 to $5 a click. And most of my campaigns overall, they average between it's $240 to $365 per click, and that's a good spot for me to be in. When the clicks get between $5 and $10, that's my yellow zone, and I will specifically question those clicks. So on one of my customers, for instance, some of his clicks on Tummy Tuck were coming in between, it was like $6.50 to $7.75 per click. And I wanted to check that with him. He said, well, when I do one of these tummy tucks, it's about $6,000 to $7,000, so I make a lot of money. And so the value was there on those tummy tuck clicks, but I went ahead and I checked it. Now, when clicks get above $10, I always scrutinize whatever that is. So another one of my customers, he does a lot of tummy tucks, again, and he was getting a lot of clicks on mini tummy tuck. And for those clicks, he was paying about like $13. And I asked him, is this worth it? Is this something that you want to do? And he says, well, I do it, but the money isn't quite the same. And it's a lot more complicated. The risk is higher. So it's not something I want to emphasize. I want to do the regular tummy tucks instead. And so from that, I went ahead and I whacked that term down to like $6 a click, which was the value point for him. Now, I think one of the best examples I ever had was for one of my clients. We had a Facebook campaign going for breast augmentation. And for 1 month, all the stars aligned. And I got him at 4 cents a click on breast augmentation. Within that 1 month, I got him over 7,000 clicks to his website. And his phone just went off the hook. I mean, he told me he was booked between 6 and 8 weeks out on breast augmentation, which was great for him, all right? Now, I couldn't repeat that next month, but it was fantastic for that 1 month. And that very clearly showed to me the power of getting a very cheap click on behalf of my client, of what it can do to accelerate their business. The next way I take a look at the cost per clicks is the geography. Now, some procedures are going to be very local. So for instance, laser hair removal, people, they're not going to drive out of their town for that. But when it comes to surgery, that's more regional. And people, they will go farther for that. So I can have a greater geography on those terms. So for instance, like facelift, people, they will drive hours, or they will even fly out to go to the right plastic surgeon, one that they trust with their face. So for instance, for those terms, I can have a much wider geography. Another one that I do to keep the cost per click low and out of my clients' money is alternative terms. And of course, so much time is spent both on AdWords and organic SEO and getting these alternative terms and finding these gems. So as another example, one of my clients, one of his big procedure was breast lift. And that was a very active term. But when I looked into the space, another one of the terms that came up was a colloquial term of saggy tits. And that term had about like 70% of the search volume, but it only had like about 1/3 of the cost as breast lift. And so I went ahead and I found that term, and it worked out great for him. And he appreciated that he was getting more business for less cost. That's the way we want it. Another way I honor my clients' money with the cost per click is I'm always watching the negative terms. So for instance, with med spas, they often have a lot of overlap with dermatologists. And med spas, they're dealing with the aesthetics of skin, whereas dermatologists, they're dealing with the health of skin. So sometimes there's confusion between the two. So for most of my med spa clients, I put in the word dermatologist in the negative keyword list because I don't want to pay for that. And for one of my clients, that worked out well since the beginning. Well, I was just checking their search terms last month, and they actually got a click on dermatology. It was for the next town over, and it was for a derivative term that I didn't expect. But I'm glad I caught it. It cost that client $4.50. And I said, screw it. So I went ahead, I put it into the negative keyword terms, and he'll never have to pay for that again. Now, beyond cost per click, the next factor I look at for my clients' money is the cost per conversion. And this one is a little more nebulous. Say if like you had like an e-commerce site, that's very easy to track because you track the cost per sale and you get it right away. With med spas and plastic surgeons, you're dealing with lead generation. Typically that's a telephone call or filling out the contact form. And those are very imperfect measurements. I think they only capture like about 40% of the overall conversions. And they're not the best mechanism. But what I do is I work with my client to get the best values possible. So I have the best estimates and I know how to bid those terms. So for instance, with my clients, we know that if someone calls up and says, I'm interested in Botox, that lead is worth a certain amount versus, hey, I'm interested in a facelift, that lead is going to be a much higher amount, right? And so I'll go ahead and I capture that, and that's part of my overall equation. Now, the next thing I work on after this is going one step beyond. Now, of course, we have a standard services contract, and we definitely provide those services, but I'd like to go beyond one step and try and delight my customers. So when I go ahead and I call my customer and say, hey, you know what? You have a misspelling on your website. You probably didn't realize it. You should fix it. They're delighted at that. When I say, you know what? Your copyright notice is 2 years old. It makes you look so you're not active. They dig that. When they say, you know what? On your conversion form, your button is very poorly formatted. They dig that as well. And so with all of this, this is how I try and bring it together to maximize my clients' money. The one time this became very clear to me is I actually got a call from someone who was interested in our services, He wanted to do a Google campaign. He said, you know, our current ad agency is not cutting it, not getting any sales, and you look like you know what you're doing, so I'd like to switch my business over to you. And so I took a look at his current campaign, but then I took a look at his website. His website was crap. And so he calls me back and I say, yeah, you know what, I'm not going to take your campaign because I'm going to be wasting your money. That is, you have all these egregious problems on your website. You need to fix your website first, and I'm happy to do a separate engagement to do that. But if I were just to take your money for your ads campaign, I'm going to be wasting it. And that's not ultimately going to serve you because I know how hard you work for that money. And that was the first time he ever heard that answer of a no. He was shocked at that, all right? Because everyone else just said, yeah, we'll go ahead and spend it. But since I see very closely how hard the med spa owners and the plastic surgeons have to work for that money that's entrusted to me to spend, and make sure to spend it very carefully. And even though I spend it month after month, I always try to remember it's not just a number on a paper, it's actual human effort and sacrifice behind it. And so I hope this just provides you a bit of a reminder and motivation too, that for whatever amount you're trusted with, whether that's just a couple $100s to start with, or I'm trusted with 6 digits, and you may be trusted with more, to keep that in mind of what it really means, and you're always very careful with it, and you treat it just like your own. Cheers.